There's something that's come up because of the Sam Cedar debate with actual justice warrior, and it was something that I noticed. This goes back years, and it's something that goes all the way back to the days of the justice warriors, social justice warriors on Tumblr, and the way that they would argue what they thought. And so then there would be somebody who would go to all the FBI data, somebody who really knew their stuff, and they would be citing all this FBI data, and then there was this whole cycle you go through of, where's this data coming from? Here, it says it right here, FBI, yada, yada, yada. Oh, and inevitably it becomes this thing of, this kind of data could be wrong, the police are corrupt, or the FBI. And then, so you have to explain to them, well, no, these are derived primarily from victims' reports. So it's the victims of crime that because most, there's only so many people who are murdered, the rest of it, and then there's a certain amount of data that, that either they have after that initial report or not, that also shows up, and that's why it was so important, like why somebody like Kevin Samuels became so important, where he would cite data on really, here's the normal life of normal people who are Black Americans. And that he got into, 52% of the adults are in the middle class, this percentage are employed, this percentage are of this age group, this percentage are of these age groups, this percentage are of kind of marriage age, this percentage of women are marriage age, this percentage of, and he had all these stats on this, so he really was able to point out how in the long run, and people have written about this, who most people would associate with white supreme pizzas, and that they pointed out the really frightening issue. The criminal class is actually an exceedingly small number of people that are very criminal. And when you finally get down to, you go through the demographics of it all, and you go through who are these people, how, and you start finding out, like, no, really, this is this sliver of the male population that commits this tremendous amount of crime. When it's violent, it starts to get smaller. Like the more this is even something that's, more and more rare of a crime, but the more it's even risky, and it requires some kind of level of, you'd be shocked. It's shocking. Like, like somebody nicking something, you kind of are like, well, people steal things all the time. But like the idea of somebody like beating somebody to death with their bare hands, like some stranger just doing this in the street. Like, this becomes a very small number of people. And often, especially with violent criminals, this is a thing, this is something that has actually, they've done something like this before, typically. Or it's not abnormal behavior for them in some way. And so this is why then it starts to become this thing, like, no, the idea that you would want to lock people like this up and get them away from other people, actually that's almost the only logical argument you end up having. Like, that, people mass incarceration, it's like, actually, yes. Now, if the idea is that you wanted to say not have all of them in as small a number of places, okay, maybe you separate this truly violent bunch from all other forms of criminals, and that really there's some forms of crime that it does seem like if you try to give people an out through especially some way of training to do something else, there's just far less likely they'll keep doing that. But there's a sliver of people who are just they're psychos, and everyone's afraid of them. Like, tough guys are afraid of somebody, and that those people you don't want out in public, and no one wants to face that. It's hard. That's a very hard thing to face, and that, is that there's just some people that they're kind of monsters, and like, what that how do you stop them? I mean, like, who go gets this guy, and so when people are in some way, shape, or form familiar with such things, that happens in their neighborhood. A lot of Black Americans have to understand that white liberals don't know this. This is something from TV. This is something from movies. They now and then will know of somebody who they're like, yeah, that guy used to freak me out in high school. It turns out, and there'll be something terrible he did. So that's something that now it's like, a lot of people got to understand about this whole, like, allies thing. It's like, they really don't get. There's like 12-year-olds who are busting caps in people, and it's like, that's like, there's a lot of pro-blacks are acting like there's something that would explain that behavior from, like, television or their school teachers or something. They want it to be an external power called white power that makes their 12 and 14-year-old boys do this, rather than, it's like, no, almost everything that would make it possible for, like, something that, that you knew one guy in the 80s who, like, he would draw pictures of this kind of thing, and it's like, but, where's he going to get, like, a super sword thing and armor or something, but now there's the availability of things that allow a young man who's starting to possibly he's starting on the road down to psychopathy, and we can't face that. We have no way of dealing with that in our culture yet. We did, and we haven't come back in a way that we haven't figured out how we're going to deal with locking away people who, they start doing horrible things real young. And a lot of you pro-blacks, black liberals, you better understand, your allies have nothing to face this. They have nothing. Yeah, they don't even you can't even discuss the data with them. They deny it's even happening. They deny you're even dying.